In compliance with Chapter 231 of the Open Public Meeting Act of the State of New Jersey, adequate notice having been given to all members of the governing body, the local source, and the Westfield Leader, which are the two newspapers designated to receive such notice. This notice is also posted on the Borough Hall Bulletin Board. I'm going to ask everyone to rise for an invocation from Councilman Mortimer.
Dear Lord, please look over our uniformed personnel in this town that keep us safe, our uniformed personnel serving us overseas, and the residents of Mountainside. Keep them all safe. Please help us with our deliberations tonight so our decisions may benefit our fellow townsmen. Amen.
Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Arthur, roll call, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Here.
Councilman Lane?
Here.
Councilman Messler?
Here.
Councilman Mortimer?
Here.
Councilman Turner?
Here.
Councilman Ross is absent.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do is approve the minutes of the regular and executive session meeting that took place on March 20th, 2010.
So moved.
Second.
Call the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have the minutes of the work and executive session meeting, which took place on April the 10th of 2012.
So moved.
Second.
Call the council.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Abstain.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Tonight, we have a full house because we have a number of proclamations that we're going to be giving out tonight. The first one is to a gentleman who has received the French Legion Medal of Honor for his service during World War II. This gentleman, I just recently met him. He is a true tribute to the Mountainside community, the state of New Jersey, and certainly our country in the way that he performed in active duty. So we have two proclamations that we're going to be giving to him tonight. The only real veteran that we have on council is our town attorney, so he's going to read the first proclamation, and that's John Post.
Thank you, Mayor. The title of the resolution is Resolution of Commendation, and it provides as follows. Whereas created in 1802 by Napoleon Bonaparte, the Legion of Honor Medal is the highest award given by the French Republic for outstanding service to that nation. And it's an award intended to emphasize the gratitude and appreciation of the French people who were liberated after the Second World War. And whereas William Tomko has been awarded the Legion of Honor Medal for his service in World War II, and whereas the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Mountainside wish to spread upon the public records of our community the facts regarding William Tomko's service during the Second World War, which earned him the Legion of Honor Medal. And whereas William Tomko served as a member of the crew of the USS Barnett, an attack transport that participated in some of the most heavily contested battles in both the Atlantic and Pacific theaters of the Second World War. Those battles included the invasion of Sicily in July 1943, when Mr. Tomko was wounded by a bomb that struck the ship, the D-Day invasion of Normandy in June of 1944, and then in the Pacific theater, the invasion of Okinawa, which lasted from early April of 1945 until mid-June of that year. And whereas after the war, Mr. Tomko became a Mason for the International Union of Bricklayers in Washington, D.C., and was active in several veterans organizations, including the American Legion Post 155, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, Chapter 2, and the VFW Post 10136. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Mountainside, County of Union, does hereby congratulate William Tomko upon his receiving the French Legion of Honor Medal. And be it further resolved that we do express to William Tomko the grateful appreciation of his fellow citizens for his long and distinguished service to the people of this nation and the world during the Second World War.
Go down there, Dan. I got something else I gotta say. In addition to the resolution that the town of Mountainside is giving to Mr. Tomko, I've also been presented with a resolution from the state of New Jersey, the Senate, and the General Assembly. It's a joint resolution that was introduced by Senator Tom Kane, Assemblyman John Bramnick, and Assemblywoman Nancy Munoz. You know, it's not too often down in Trenton that you get a joint resolution, especially sponsored by the Republicans, that has the support of both the Republicans and the Democrats. So it really shows what somebody like Mr. Tom can bring people together. I just want to read through it. The Senate and General Assembly of the State of New Jersey are pleased to join in honoring and saluting William Tomko, a highly esteemed member of his borough of Mountainside, Union County community, who received the French prestigious Legion of Honor Medal. This coveted accolade was bestowed upon Mr. William Tomko in grateful recognition of his role in combat during World War II aboard the USS Barnett, including his participation in the invasions of Sicily, Italy, Marseille in South France, as well as the D-Day invasion of Normandy. In addition to his efforts in the Pacific Theater, specifically at Okinawa and in Japan. The Americans who were deployed during World War II, exemplified by Mr. Tomko, have borne great burden and made great sacrifices in the service of causes of freedom and democracy, not only for our country, but for also all others who would embrace those ideals. Within all the spheres of his life and work, William Tomko has established a model to emulate and set a standard of excellence towards which others might strive. I see a lot of young people in here tonight. He is truly a hero. It is altogether proper and fitting for this legislature to commend William Tomko as an individual of outstanding character and exceptional determination. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and General Assembly of the State of New Jersey that this legislature hereby honors and salutes William Tomko, pays tribute to his meritorious record of military service, and extends to him sincere best wishes. Be it further resolved that a duly authenticated copy of this resolution, signed by the Senate President and the Assembly Speaker, and attested to by the Senate Secretary and the Assembly Clerk, will be transmitted to Mr. William Tomko. Again, I want to give him a hand.
You know, as a veteran of World War II, and in particular being a resident of Mountainside for some 56 years, going on 57, I'm a proud veteran to say I lived in Mountainside, raised my children in Mountainside, and I'm not going to tell you any more about my war record, but you heard it from the mayor, you heard it from the consul, and all I can say is thank you all very much.
Before I go back up top, I also want to take this opportunity to announce that Mountainside, this Memorial Day, is going to have their first annual Memorial Day Parade. We're going to start at the library for the traditional service that we have in Mountainside. Then we're going to have a parade down through the town, down to Our Lady of Lourdes. One of the things in meeting with the VFW members, they had indicated that they were having trouble reaching out to some of the veterans in Mountainside. So what we did is we went through the tax records and got a list of all the veterans that get veterans deductions for their taxes, and there's over 290 of them in Mountainside. So all those veterans that have, we'd like you to come forward and contact the VFW. We want you to come and participate in our parade on Memorial Day. And if you have any questions on how to do that, you can contact us here at Borough Hall, and we'll pass the information on to the members of the VFW. So I look forward to seeing everyone at the Memorial Day Parade. That's just the start, guys. Okay, next we have our Mabel Good Young Award tonight, and I guess we have Mr. Bill Giannone, who's going to do those honors.
Mabel Young Good Award.
What did I say? Good Young Mabel Award? Okay.
Thank you, Mayor
Mabel
Mirabelli.
Young Good Neighbor Award. Sorry about that.
Yes, the Mabel Young Good Neighbor Award. On behalf of the entire Mabel Young Committee, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. The sure sign of spring happened last Saturday when the baseball and softball teams paraded through Mountainside. Well, another sure sign of spring is the presentation of the Mabel Young Good Neighbor Award. Some years, the award takes on the appearance of a Lifetime Achievement Award, as in last year with the Parada family, and in previous years when we've honored people like the Weeks and Sigrid Patch. This year, it's a little different, and we received many letters and many suggestions for people who are nominated by their friends, by their neighbors, by people in town. This year, we chose two recipients who really exemplified the definition of a great neighbor. The letters of recommendation for these recipients were very personal, very simple letters explaining in great detail some very humbling things that these two recipients did for their neighbors on a daily basis, some very specific things that they did where they reached out to their neighbors. Both of them are very active in our community, although many of us may not know both of them by name. That doesn't mean that their tasks and their duties and the things that they've chosen to do for their community and their neighbors are any less important than any of our other past recipients. The letters were extremely heartfelt, and we felt very duty-bound as a committee to honor both of these recipients this year. It's my great honor to call to the podium this year's winners, Ms. Helen Borkert and Ms. Deb Schrank.
I'm a very shy person, as you all know. But I just want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to worship. I've been in church too long. To service my neighbors and my friends. And I have a positive attitude. And I'd like to just read something what my philosophy is. And my thoughts for living: I choose to be happy. Happiness is not dependent on circumstances. It's a choice to make. Look for the good in everything, although one may not see that right away. There's a gift and a blessing in every situation. The joy within me overflows into all areas of my life. Thank you.
I have to write mine out, but First, I would like to thank the members of the Mabel Young Committee for this award, and I would also like to thank the Town Council for taking the time from their important business to allow for this public recognition. And I would like to thank my parents for choosing to move here from East Brunswick when I began 6th grade at Deerfield School so many years ago. I was very fortunate to have grown up in Mountainside, and I was happy to return here to raise my own 2 girls. Everyone who lives here knows that this is a community of caring people who are committed to providing support for one another in countless ways. They do this not for any kind of recognition, but rather because they know it is the right thing to do, or actually the way we do it here in Mountainside. And so I share this award with every individual in Mountainside who has done a good deed for a neighbor by perhaps prepping a meal for someone who is sick or unable to do so for themselves, or caring for a child whose parents are in need, or offering support out of sympathy or empathy, or being there just to listen when someone needs it most. It is my belief that a community is only as good as the people in it. I am honored to accept this award along with Helen and other Mountainside residents who received such tribute over the past few decades. Thank you again to each and every one of you.
Just one last thing. Helen is having a little gathering at her house after this, and all of you are invited to 301 Meeting House Lane. Thank you so much.
It's good that we don't have live TV.
Before we get to the next proclamation, there are some young citizens and some young good neighbors who are in attendance at our meeting tonight. I got the pleasure of meeting some of the, I know I'm going to pronounce it wrong, Webelos, which I understand is like halfway between a Cub Scout and a Boy Scout. Is that just about right? Okay. So I'd like them all to stand up, please. And if we could give them a round of applause. Why don't you guys turn to the camera so you'll be on TV? Go ahead, you guys go over there and turn by the camera so you can get on TV.
Face that way. There you go. Got him, Matt? Good.
Okay, that's it, guys. Now, these are our next leaders of Mountainside, the next good citizens, the next good neighbors, and I'm glad that they're here tonight. The next resolution of commendation that we have is to a Governor Livingston senior who played on the Governor Livingston High School basketball team. Myself and Councilman Turner have had the pleasure of coaching and watching this young man develop into a fine young man, a good athlete, but more importantly, a fine young man, and a tribute to this community. I'm not going to have to tell a story about him. So I can remember when Logan.
No, don't tell that one.
When Logan was on our 12-year-old baseball team, he was the slowest guy in the world. I don't know what happened, but somewhere between when he got out of Deerfield and when he started up at GL, he got speed, and I'm still not sure how he did that. Well, we had previously given him a resolution of commendation, but after we gave it to him, then he went on and did some other pretty amazing things. So we felt it was only appropriate for us to amend that resolution of commendation. It was back on January 20th that he scored his 1,000th point in Hillside. Then after that, and I've come to know, he was named to the third team All-County, and he averaged 24.4 points per game. I don't know, every game I went to, we scored more than that, so I don't know how his average was that low. But more importantly, he finished his career by scoring 1,324 points, which was the highest amount of points scored by anyone at Governor Livingston High School. So we have a resolution of commendation, and I want everyone to give Logan a hand. I know Logan has some things that he wants to say, but we're going to give him
Thank you very much. Speech up. So first off, thank you very much to the mayor and council. Appreciate it. You guys are always very supportive. I'd like to thank the borough of Mountainside that raised me, and I'll always be a loyal Mountainsider. I'd like to thank my parents, my mom and dad, who couldn't be here tonight, who I wish they could have, and especially my brother. And I'd like to thank all the coaches that have coached me over the years that have improved my basketball skills and held me off the court also. A special thank you to my friends and families. A lot of people came out. It means a lot. Appreciate it, everyone. So on that note, my college decision has kind of been like a mystery to everyone, and I would like to finally announce that this fall I will be attending Rutgers University, and I'll be a Scarlet Knight. So thank you very much, and I'm glad I got that off my chest. So thanks, everyone.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Okay, got everybody loose?
We truly do appreciate everyone coming out tonight, but, you really don't have to stay for the rest of our meeting. Except there are two people that do have to stay, Luke Mirabelli and Logan Kelly. If you guys don't mind sitting, I'm sorry, Logan Turner. I got Logan Kelly on the mind. You guys want to sit down in the front row here so you can watch the rest of the meeting, please?
Yeah.
No, thanks everyone for coming tonight. If you want to leave, but we won't be
Thank you.
insulted. Oh, you guys are sticking around, the Boy Scouts, they gotta stay. You guys gotta, you're leaving.
That was the fastest Mabel Young ever.
Yeah.
So will Logan Kelly be playing ball at Rutgers?
He has a spot on the team. Aaron Smith.
Yeah, how you doing?
Can't complain. Almost right here. That's how I roll.
Parade meeting is 8:30.
Yes, it is, here. That one.
Sure, if you will.
Oh.
Say hi to Mr. Post.
Okay, next we have the second reading on ordinance 1195, 2012.
This ordinance establishes the Mountainside budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank as allowed by law under NJSA 40A:4-45.14.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, poll the council.
You gotta open it
We
to
have
the
to open
public.
that to public
I'm sorry, it's
discussion.
open up for public discussion.
See no public?
Seeing no public participation for this ordinance, I move that portion be closed.
Second.
Okay.
The public portion is closed now, we can poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have the 2012 municipal budget hearing, and for adoption. This is a resolution adopting the 2012 budget for the Borough of Mountainside and appropriating funds in the amount of $7,569,933.30. Just to do an overview, of some of the increases and some of the decreases in the budget this year. The first increase is the infamous emergency pre-Halloween storm cleanup, which cost the town approximately $60,000. We had some equipment that was also damaged during that storm, as well as the Hurricane Irene. That was $24,750. There was an increase in the health insurance waivers, which is where people who have a spouse that may have insurance through some other either employment or some other state agency can waive their right to have health insurance. That increased by $76,000. Our joint insurance fund increased by $6,000. Our Social Security increased by $5,000. We also had to increase our reserves for tax appeals by $12,000. We had some contractual obligations for salaries. The first is police. That was an increase of $97,386. For all other salaries except police, it went up $30,500. We did also have increases in utilities, water and gasoline of $11,000. Now, what I call the good news, the department operating budgets went down by $16,300. We also had a decrease in our contribution to the pension fund of $21,672. We also had a decrease in the assessment from the Railway Valley Sewer Authority of $31,000. So as a result of those increases and decreases, the operating budget had an increase of $253,277.99. We also had some revenues, some that went down and some that went up. The court fees went down by $12,000. The interest on taxes and investment went down $11,000. The uniform fire safety local fees, that went down $5,100. We had receipts for delinquent taxes went down by $41,000. We did receive some FEMA reimbursement of $22,168. We got an increase in the cable franchise fees of $5,486. And then we had the sale of some municipal assets, basically some cars that we no longer needed of $4,500. So the shortage in the anticipated revenues was $37,538.62. So the budget increase over last year was $290,816.61. For the average assessed home in Mountainside, the increase was $98.91. In addition, though, because of the fact that our tax assessments, the assessments on real estate, especially on the commercial side of the street, went down this year. We also had an increase of 1 point just because of the fact that our property values, mainly on the commercial side of the street, decreased. So the overall increase, when you take into account the increase in the budget and the decrease in the assessment, is for the average household is $113.84. So at this time, I'm going to open the meeting up to the public for anyone that has any questions about the budget.
Seeing no comment regarding the budget, I close that portion. Unless, did somebody have anything? No?
You have a second? Close it.
Second.
Okay, now we'll poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Okay, next we have our resolutions. Resolution 59, 2012. Bill?
This resolution will authorize the borough's Chief Financial Officer, Jill Good, to purchase saving bonds in the amount of $300 for the valedictorian and $200 for the salutatorian from the 2012 Deerfield 8th grade graduating class.
Second.
Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Councilman Messler,
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Must have heard about something.
Oh, did you take,
We closed the...
you opened to the public, closed to the public, and now we need to vote on
Okay, forgot that.
resolution, I'm sorry,
Budget
58,
resolution for
2012.
58, 2012, which is a resolution to adopt the budget. I need a motion for that resolution.
Second.
Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilman Messler,
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Okay, next we have Resolution 60-2012.
Yes, having the need to update the borough's tax maps, this resolution will award the contract to the lowest bid, that being the engineering firm of Hatch Mott McDonald in the amount of $29,500. So moved.
Okay, poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Councilman Messler,
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 61, 2012.
A resolution appointing the 2012 playground staff with Angela Almeida as playground supervisor at $3,037, and as assistant supervisor, Natalie Hinkrowitz, Max Ingracia, Paul Mirabelli, and Ben Carmago at $2,170 for the season.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second, that's Paul Mirabelli Jr., by the way.
Just to make a clarification, I'm not taking another job in this town. I have plenty of work to do. That's my son. Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Councilman Messler.
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 60, 2012. Keith?
Resolution 62, 2012, under NJSA 40A:5-4, this resolution will certify that the governing body has received and reviewed the 2011 Annual Report of Audit, specifically the section entitled General Comments and Recommendations. So moved.
Second.
Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Councilman Messler,
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 63, 2012.
Resolution 63, 2012, having reviewed the 2011 audit report, this resolution will approve the corrective action plan as submitted by the borough's Chief Financial Officer, Jill Good. I'd also like to point out, for the third year in a row, having no recommendations from the auditors, there are no corrective actions needed to be taken. I'd like to congratulate the staff for doing a great job, especially Jill Good, our Chief Finance Officer.
Good job.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Councilman Messler,
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 64, 2012. Bob?
Yes, at the recommendation of the Borough Engineer Mike Disco Jr., this resolution will approve the return of escrow funds in the amount of $500 to the homeowner at 1049 Sunny Slope Drive following completion of a road opening permit project. So moved.
Second.
Poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Councilman Messler,
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer,
Yes.
Councilman Turner.
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 65, 2012. Glenn?
Having passed Resolution Number 104-2011 on August 16, 2011, for the approval of a tax property appeal at Block 23.C, Lot 8.f, indicating an overpayment of $6,624.80, when in fact the corrected amount should have been $6,546.80. This resolution will amend the prior resolution reflecting the corrected amount.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, poll the council, please.
Councilwoman Andre,
Yes.
Councilman Lane,
Yes.
Councilman Messler,
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 66-2012.
This resolution will be forwarded to the County of Union asking permission to put up a banner across Mountain Avenue and to close Mountain Avenue between New Providence Road and Mountain View Drive for the annual PAL Antique Car Show Cancer Fund event held Father's Day Sunday, June 17th, 2012, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Second.
I'd like to also request that we amend that resolution for the time to be from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Do we have a motion to amend that resolution?
So moved.
We have a second. Call the council on the amended resolution, please.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have second reading on ordinance 1196, 2012 with public input. Keith?
Ordinance 1196, 2012 is an ordinance to appropriate the sum of $35,000 from the Capital Improvement Fund for the purchase of a 2012 Ford F-350 truck for the Department of Public Works. So moved.
Second.
We have any public input?
Seeing no public input, I move that section be closed.
Second to close the public input. Please.
Second.
Call the council.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Messler?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have Resolution 1197, 2012 for second reading. Bill, you want to do that, please?
This is an ordinance amending sections 1008C1, 1009C1, and 1010C1 of the Land Use Ordinance of the Borough of Mountainside.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
It's now open for public input. Before we close the public input.
Hold on a second. Do we have somebody for that, or?
I think so.
Public input about the
About the ordinance.
If you'd like to come up, state your name.
You have to come up, give us your name, if you would, please, and your address, and your concerns.
Ken, sure.
feel funny like talking. I'm sorry. My name is Kurt Mayens. I live at 1015 Charles Street, Mountainside, New Jersey.
1015?
Yes, I'm not a professional speaker, so you got to bear with me a little bit. And I have some concerns about this amendment because I feel in one way it's a reaction to the tri-borough situation that's been going on in town. And so I'd just like to talk a little bit about it, possibly, I don't know how this meeting works, if I talk or you answer, or if I just should go on. So is there a particular way this is done, Mayor, or?
You talk.
Okay, I'll talk.
We'll try and answer.
I'll try to do this as quickly as I can because I know other people are. First of all, I'm wondering why now? Why did this ordinance suddenly get proposed now rather than 6 months ago or a year ago or 6 months or a year from now? That's my number one question. And two, I'd like the board to consider some things when you're changing the way this LI zone is done. Many people have come to us and said, well, we should expect sports types of venues in there simply because we live near the light industry zone. Now, many of us have lived there many, many years, and we knew what to expect when we move in. I've been there over 25 years, and the last 3 nights I've stayed out in my backyard for about 2 hours in the evening, and virtually no one goes down the street. Tonight, before I came to the meeting, an hour and a half before, one truck came down the street. It was a delivery truck for UPS. So I feel that this type of venue, if you put it in there without a lot more study, could really create a traffic issue that hasn't been addressed correctly when the experts came forward, and I'd like to point out why. The original study talks about this 2-acre building going up with less parking than it was there before. Now, they had an expert come in, and she was very good. She made a great presentation, but she admitted under testimony that she had gotten all her information from an expert that was hired by Tri-Borough. And the attorney for the board cautioned the board and said, hey, you have to watch this information. It doesn't mean it wasn't correct. But he said you have to watch it because it's coming, it's like the fox guarding the chicken coop here. But they showed us a lot of numbers, and the numbers were lower than some other experts said. But just using their numbers for a minute, if I may. With the hours that were originally presented, with cars going in and out of these parking lots, this particular one, there would be over 288,000 in and outs in a year. I think that has to be addressed in some way. For anybody on the board to look at members of the neighborhood and say that's normal, or this is what we have to do because people don't want to drive as far to go someplace, I think is a flawed way of doing it. Now, there's another thing I'd like to bring up. The entire testimony based on the traffic studies was based on the fact, and I highlighted it, there's about 19 different points in these 6 months of testimony in which every time an outside expert challenged the parking, someone on the board or the attorney for the applicant would go, remember, they're only doing soccer and lacrosse here. And so when we talked about another place, perhaps up in Randolph, they said, well, you can't compare it to that place because they have many other things they're doing there. Well, that's the very thing you're proposing now, more than just one or two things. And the ironic part was the whole time, the study was based on 2 sports, on certain hours, and then after public comment was cut off, then they said, oh, instead of opening at 5 on weekdays, we'll open at 7 a.m. Well, the whole traffic study was flawed again, because when I went back and reviewed it, she said it really won't affect the traffic because it's only going to be in the evening hours. Well, if you're opening at 10 hours earlier, then what relevance does the study have? It really isn't apropos anymore. And the amount of cars coming in with the new hours, if you use their numbers, now I know there was a lot of contention during that meeting, because I'm sure some of you are aware of it, where some experts said it could be double or triple what they thought. But if you use their numbers, not mine, not somebody that's against it, there would be 681,000 in and outs in that driveway in a year. Now, you know, I'm not trying to make a lot of this, but 681,000 in and outs, and you don't think that's going to make a difference? When the companies there now are basically 9 to 5. Now, I realize some have overtime. I realize they can run 24 hours a day. But the basic idea of that in there when we bought was we knew it's more or less a daytime job, just like you and I go to work, we come home, and that's the end of the traffic with a few exceptions. But this is going to go on 7 days a week till 10:30, 11 at night, starting at 7 a.m. in the morning. So I beg you, before you pass resolutions, I have another question for the board. What kind of study did you do independently? Because one of the interesting questions that was posed to, I believe it was Mr. Zanelli, pardon me if I pronounce his name wrong, he's one of the investors in this. He was asked by a member of the board if he had interviewed anybody in the neighborhood to see what they thought of it. And he said, yes. And they said, who? And he said, well, I talked to all the other business owners. Well, that's fine, but they go home at 5 o'clock. We're sitting in our backyard at 5 o'clock. And no one ever came there in all those months prior to that or during and said, could we help you out? You know, the only help I ever got from the town on this was once, and I believe it was Mr. Debbie, when we complained about trucks idling overnight that were trying to hide down there. He was the most helpful guy. I want to thank him publicly now because he did that for me. But have any of you members personally come to anybody's yard in that neighborhood and asked us or looked and stood there or had a car go into that driveway and think of, again, what I have, 681,000 cars using their figure? If you use the other experts' figure, it's well over 1.5 million cars. I got to tell you, 5, 6, 7, 800,000 cars does not have an effect on property value. So another one of my questions is, what studies have you done to show how this would affect the property value. Because the L1, LI zone, not L1 zone, LI zone before was zoned one way, and yes, it had traffic, but it was light, and it was more or less 9 to 5. Now it's going to be 16, 17, 18 hours a day with the volume that no one in that neighborhood could match. If you took every other building, every other one, it would not match what one of these could do. So I'd like to know what kind of research you did with studies on value, another traffic, because the other traffic report doesn't work, because the hours are different. In fact, in the LI zone now, the business could open 24 hours a day. And another thing I have a question about is if you're going to put these in other areas, what's your parking requirements for it? Is it just because somebody wants to approve this, that then it becomes how many spots are in this spot? Is that the new zoning? Or have you sat down and said, if a new venue goes in, say another sports facility comes in town, that it's tennis or pools, I specifically asked, what are the parking requirements? Has that been done? So there's a lot of open-ended questions here, and I respect the board, and I know you want to get taxes in town and new businesses, and we don't want vacant buildings, I understand that. But, somebody's got to go in back of these yards and look and say, whoa, this is really, really different than what's been there before. And should we really be doing it this way? So I'd like that to be carefully thought of. So I don't want to use everybody else's time, but I thank you for the time you've given me.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any comments they want to make? We'll respond to them after all the comments are made.
Come on, just come up, state your name for the record, name and address.
Lino Sicanolfi, 1032 Charles Street. I just want to reflect on what Kurt had mentioned earlier. I do support him in what he said, and I agree with him wholeheartedly. I don't necessarily live near that LI zone. I'm across the street. However, I'm a big sports fan, and I don't knock down any type of sports complex, sports facilities. However, due to the nature of where this facility is going to be presented and proposed, where it's going to be built, I don't feel that it is the right spot. We do have some issues in that area in regards to environmental issues, water, runoff, etc., that kind of stuff. And I also want to touch base real quick on the traffic. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Charles Street, but let me tell you something. During the day, that place is like a raceway, and I'm not just saying that because of what's going on here tonight, but there are motorcycles flying down that street, there's cars flying down that street, and it's very busy in the morning and also in the evenings. And I know there's a traffic study done by a Springfield police officer as well as somebody from the board, and the numbers were totally off. We're talking like more than double. So obviously there's a big issue and a big discrepancy there. However, I also want to point out that I wish I had received this letter sooner, but I received a letter from the postmaster, and if I can read it, if it's okay with everybody.
Go ahead.
He wrote me a letter, and he states the following: safety concerns about the dangerous flow of traffic have impelled the Postal Service to announce the conversion of your street to curbside delivery. Okay. Your cooperation will make it possible for the letter carrier to deliver all mail except parcels and special services mail without leaving the safety of the postal truck. The postmaster is concerned about his crew. I'll tell you what, I'm extremely concerned about my kids. And if mommy's got to drive Johnny to this soccer game and 22's backed up, and she takes a back route and she's flying down Charles, and my daughter or son gets hit, think about it when you make this decision, please. There's families here. I've been here for 6 years. I like it. It's comfortable. It's quiet. I know that sometimes we have cops in Charles issuing tickets. I've seen him, and I appreciate that. I think he's doing a great job, and he gets, I'm sure, a lot of guys, or people in general, I should say, but just please, when you guys make this decision, you know, it's more than money here. I mean, you're talking residents, taxpayers. We do our duty. We go to work every day. We come home, spend time with family. We want it to be quiet. You know, we don't need this. We really don't. We don't deserve it. Thank you.
Lisa Friedman, 87 Briar Hill Circle in Springfield. I'm right around the corner from Charles. I've been living in my house for 19 years, and he's absolutely right. There is a lot of traffic, and I've stated before that we get a lot of traffic every time 22 is crowded. They come through us. And you know that there is a new apartment complex that has been built along Mountain Avenue, and none of those apartments have been filled to capacity yet. So I want you to realize, once those people move in, how much traffic we're going to endure, because that's going to thread through Mountain. And on top, and having this complex is really just drowning us with all these people coming through. And I have to agree with the gentleman. I really feel it is a dangerous situation. I have children too. I understand that everybody's upset about empty real estate and retail. I've been in retail my whole life, but I don't think it's fair to dump on private citizens. And I've said this before at the last meeting. There is several areas that have play places. None of them are on top of a residence. Not the one in Springfield, Frozen Ropes, not the ballpark on Route 22. In Milburn, the Sports Academy is across the street from the ShopRite. There are no houses surrounding any of these facilities, but for some reason, this facility is being placed so close to private residents, I can't comprehend what the philosophy is behind that. And I was really upset. I had no idea you guys were having a meeting today. It's just that one of the gentlemen there had informed me that you were meeting. I had no idea about any ordinance being changed or anything of that nature, and that was really very disturbing to me, because people do want to feel like they're being notified when you're kind of turning their lives upside down, and that's how I feel. Thank you.
My name is Richard Blecker. I live at 92, excuse me, Briar Hill Circle in Springfield. As far as Triborough Sports is concerned, my home is within 100 feet of the proposed complex. I don't know if everyone is familiar, I guess you are, with the Diamond Head building. The Diamond Head building is 40,000 square feet. This structure will be 80,000 square feet. It'll be twice the size of the Diamond Head building. If you went and you stood there and you looked at that and you said, gee, would I want something twice the size of that to be sitting in my backyard? I don't think you'd want that there. I don't think there's one of you that would want it there. The only one who would want it there, Mr. Disco stated that he would love to have the building like this next to his home. So that would be fine with me. Another example of the size of this, because I want you to realize how big it is. If you my property is about 100 by 100, and if you go up Briar Hill Circle and you take 8 properties like mine, you could fit the houses and the entire lots in this structure of 80,000 square feet. That's how big it is. All the talk about statistics and cars are all underrated. They're underrated because during the hearings, everything was based upon 2 fields. When we started doing research at other places that were similar in structure, we found that the size of the fields that they were using, you could fit up to 7 fields on one of their fields. That's how big the fields are. You could fit 7, there would be 14 fields. It would make the statistics on the traffic 7 times what they were stating. They could be 4 really big fields on each field, which would be 8 fields. That would increase the traffic 4-fold. So all the statistics we're hearing about how much traffic there is, it's a small percentage of what it's really going to be. Nobody's mentioning this cut-through. The cut-through is Charles Street and Briar Hill Circle. All cars that are coming down to the sports complex who are traveling down Summit Avenue are going to do that cut-through. They're going to cut off on Charles Street. They're going to go through Briar Hill Circle. They're going to get to Mountain Avenue, make a right, and then they're going to make a right onto Sheffield Street. In addition to that, all cars going there will occupy that distance between Briar Hill Circle and Sheffield Street, because it's the only way that you can get to Sheffield Street. So if you're traveling east on 22, you have to make that, you have to get off and go to the U-turn on Mountain Avenue and then go to Sheffield Street. And if you're traveling west, you have to also get off at the same place and make the U-turn and also travel on that strip of land. It's going to bottleneck the traffic that is on Mountain Avenue now. When I come home from work at, let's say, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, sometimes the traffic is backed up as far as Hillside Avenue. And this would terribly exacerbate that whole situation. So traffic is another issue. Of course, we have noise, and there's people that testified as to what happens at the end of a soccer game. We're talking about not so much the children, but at night, the adults playing. They talked about places, a couple of guys had actually participated in this, spoke about people getting cut with a razor, fights, people hanging out in the parking lot drinking beer after a game. This is all in my backyard. When we researched all the other facilities, there is none of them that are on top of the residences like this one is. And so the concern here should have been, especially for the Mountainside residents, and I would hope for the Springfield residents as well, although, you know, you could say, gee, the heck with the Springfield residents, who cares about them? And it almost feels that you're being more interested in ratables than you are being interested in the residents. And it really hurts us, you know, especially when officials are elected and we expect them to take care of us and guard us, and then something like this happens. So the end around is that, miraculously, there's a resolution here to change the ordinances. To back up a little bit, when the final vote came around, the chairman of your panel, of your board, Mr. Tomaine, voted against it. He understood all of the case law that was presented, and he voted against it. And he cited the case law that our attorneys had been there citing as well. It just wasn't fair. Two of the gentlemen who were newbies on the panel, and out of the 6 meetings, were only there for 2, they voted in favor of it, and they didn't even ask a question. Gee, is this a legal thing to do? It wasn't a legal thing to do. And in our challenge to take it in front of the Superior Court, I think that a judge is going to overturn it. So the end around for everyone here is to change the ordinance. But you don't just go and change an ordinance. You don't just go and say, oh, you know, I want it, so we're going to have it.
Excuse me, Mr. Blecker. We don't want to miss anything that you have to say.
So just, I diversed for a second, but getting back to the newbies on the panel who voted yes after being there for 2 meetings, never questioning whether or not this was legal, never saying to the attorney on the panel, gee, is this really a legal thing to do? Is Mr. Tomaine correct? Or are we allowed to? Is this against case law? They didn't even ask. They replaced 2 men that were on the panel who, in fact, from the line of questioning during the first 4 meetings, it appeared that maybe they were on our side, that maybe they would be against it. Miraculously, the year turned and they were gone. And it's my understanding that at least one of them was asked not to return. He said, I've been here for 25 years. Why would you not let me, why would you not renew my term? And he was told, well, we're going in a different direction. Sorry, you're not going to be back. Is this what we expect from our officials and the people that run our communities? That we're going to be strong-armed into getting the decision that you seek because you think that Triborough is a wonderful place for the children? I think it's a wonderful place for the children, too. My grandchildren all play soccer, but not on top of my house. Not something that's 80,000 square feet, 100 feet from my home. It's not fair. Yeah, maybe there's another place in Springfield, Springfield or in Mountainside, rather, where something like this would be wonderful. And that's not on top of residents. You have a field right next to this municipality. There's no homes around it. They're not disturbing people when they play soccer. It's just an unfair thing to do to people who have worked all their lives, have paid for their homes, have worked hard. We all get up in the morning, we go to work, we're good people, and now our homes are going to be devaluated by hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's what's going to happen. I won't be able to sell my home because nobody's going to buy it when they look and they see a structure that's 31 feet high and 80,000 square feet. It's not going to happen. So it's totally unfair. But let me get to the questions that I want to ask, because these are the questions that I think are important. I would like to know, can someone explain what was the extent of the notice that was provided for this hearing? I'll read the questions, and then in your own way, maybe you can answer them. Was notice given to all property owners within the light industrial zone and within 200 feet as required by statute? Who prepared this notice? Who was responsible for getting this notice out to the public? Is there an affidavit of proof of service on file by the clerk or person who actually mailed the notice? Has that affidavit been added to the record for this hearing? I want to see why I did not receive a notice in the mail for this, as well as my neighbors who couldn't be here tonight and or have no idea that this ordinance was being acted on. Why doesn't the notice identify the properties whose zoning designation is going to be changed by street names, common names, or lot and block numbers? Were the notices served either personally or by certified mails required by law? I was not served, but was lucky to have been informed about this by others. I am absolutely certain that there are property owners affected by what is going on here tonight that have entirely no idea that this zoning is being changed. That is fundamentally wrong. When was this ordinance prepared or drafted? Who prepared the ordinance? Did the borough's planner issue a report to you regarding the zone change? When? I'd like a copy. Who sponsored this ordinance? When was the ordinance discussed by the mayor and council? I want the minutes of these meetings. The public should know who is capitulating for Triborough sports, who is the primary beneficiary of this proposed ordinance change. When was the ordinance referred to the Land Use Board for comment? Did the Land Use Board issue a report regarding this proposed ordinance? If so, I want a copy of that report. When was the master plan changed to allow these new permitted uses in this LI zone? The master plan from 2009 never recommended any of the proposed uses in that ordinance in the LI zone. Do the mayor and council think the proposed uses in this ordinance are consistent with the master plans, and how so? Did the Land Use Board find that the proposed ordinance was not inconsistent with the master plan? If so, how are the mayor and council reconciling this inconsistency with the master plan, and why suddenly is the ordinance being proposed? I want to give my other neighbors a chance to speak. I'm not happy, and I don't think any of you would be happy if you had a structure like this going up next to your home. And it's not that I don't care about the children. It's not that I don't want them to enjoy indoor soccer rink or be able to have league games and things like that. But we have to find a place where it's conducive. Triborough never even did its due diligence as far as trying to find another location for a facility like this, which was really part of what they were supposed to be doing. They didn't do that. So when Mr. Tomaine voted against it, the chairman of the board voted against it, and not one person that was sitting on that panel agreed with him, there's something wrong. Terribly wrong. So thanks for your indulgence tonight.
Anybody else have any comments? No.
Good evening, Brenda Bucci, 4 Briar Hill Circle, Springfield, New Jersey. I, for one, am concerned about the traffic, but more than that, I'm concerned about strangers in my neighborhood. My family moved into Springfield in 1983, and about 10 or 12 years later, my father did a traffic study, and because Briar Hill Circle was supposed to be closed after Briar Hill Circle was built, and it wasn't, and he found out, and he figured, well, maybe we can do it now. So they, of course, you know, with the neighbors at the top and pressure from Mountainside, they didn't close it. Our mayor came here before he was mayor and mentioned that that might be a possibility on the table now, if this is done. I'd like you to consider the testimony that was given to the planning board before you make a decision tonight. I'm going to ask you not to make a decision tonight. You know, it's not, you know, you can listen to me or not listen to me, but, you know, I work hard too. I come home. I want peace in my neighborhood. We lived in Newark for many years. My father tried to sell his own house, and he was tied and gagged in the house. There's, of course, lots of bad news on TV, and it scares me. I'm a woman living alone, and I don't need strangers in my neighborhood. That's how I feel. And I don't think Mountainside wants it either. I think it's going to keep the police department very busy, ours and yours. And I just think it's something you should consider. This is not just about little children coming to soccer with their moms and dads. It's about adult men as well. Because I know that there are older men and older boys that play soccer and are in leagues, and they don't always use common sense. And they don't have the same regard for our neighborhood and our lives as they would in their own neighborhood. So please consider this, because to me it's threatening. As a woman, it's threatening. And it's, you know, I don't know where to go. You have an alarm on your house, that's one thing. Now you have to get outside security cameras. That's how I feel. I feel like I have to do this because strangers from half an hour away, Triborough said. Half an hour away is Jersey City, Newark, Plainfield, you know, Greenbrook, yes, Rahway, Linden, Elizabeth, Hoboken. Okay, half an hour away. It draws a lot of people. It probably will. It'll be a big moneymaker, but is it worth the lives of the community? Please consider this. Thank you.
Dominic Cravo, 1003 Charles Street. I'd like to thank Mr. Blecker for his great speech. He had asked 19 serious questions that deserve 19 serious answers. And before you answer any of those 19 questions that he seriously asked, maybe you guys should all consider sitting down together collectively as a group to get some serious answers. This is a serious 80,000 square foot complex going up in my backyard. So I think collectively, the board as a group should sit down before you answer these questions. Thank you.
Alexander, 128 Briar Hill Circle, Springfield, New Jersey. I worked for 3 days on trying to present something cohesive and comprehensive to you tonight, but I'm going to push it aside. A lot of what I had in here was said by other folks, different words, but the same message. But what I was struck by when I first came here at your meeting, how you honored your war veterans, you honored your athletes, you honored your neighbors, and I wasn't exposed to that before in Mountainside, and I thought, this is great. This is really nice how you honor, the people and the neighbors, and then you go and treat, well, not you in particular, but the residents are treated the way they were during the whole planning board cycle, those 6 months, when there was so much testimony given about, the traffic, the lights, the noise, the pollution, the water problems. I mean, there was a lot of testimony given, a lot of back and forth, and the traffic studies were all done during rush hour. I don't care about rush hour, quite honestly. A few more cars on a percentage basis mean nothing to me. I'm concerned about Saturday morning, Sunday mornings, when I sit on my porch and have a glass of orange juice and it's quiet, it's dead quiet, or evenings when I come home from work and I have a beer on my front porch, I have my cat in my lap. That's not going to be the case with hundreds of cars coming every hour at court turnover time up and down the street until 11 o'clock at night at least. That concerns me more than a rush hour traffic, to be honest. I do see the Sheffield and Route 22 U-turn being backed up tremendously, especially during tournaments. And I know a concession was made that Triborough would not have tournaments, but that's not going to happen. They're going to have tournaments at some point. And this is not just about Triborough. You're changing an ordinance that's going to allow more facilities. So Sheffield can become 3 or 4 or 5 of these facilities with all kinds of traffic. And I do understand, let me get the terminology correct, I do understand adaptive reuse, and you change ordinances for that. But I mean, I've driven down Sheffield several times. I don't see a whole bunch of abandoned buildings. The one in question is, yes, it's not being used, but at least from a drive-by, I see a vibrant street. I don't see a lot of empty, abandoned buildings that would apply to using that kind of reasoning to make this ordinance. I'm jumping around because I'm not reading what I had written. But the other thing I just wanted to say was I was very surprised, given what a caring neighborhood you are, about just the way this whole thing happened. I know this was said already. You had a chairman who spoke for 15 minutes. He gave a 15-minute dissertation about positive criteria, negative criteria. You can't approve this based on, pass this on variance. It's got to be an ordinance. And he spoke for 15 minutes eloquently on why this can't be passed. And then the other 6 members of the board, without any explanation at all, went, yes, 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 yes. That just creates questions. Then they have 2 members of the board, and again, during this questioning, you could tell who was in favor of Triborough and who wasn't. A novice like myself sat there, I know who was going to vote yes and no, and the 2 who appeared to be leaning towards the no were, again, as was explained before, were replaced. That raises questions. The fact that you pass the Triborough application, and then after the fact, try to pass an ordinance or put through an ordinance that supports that application, either hoping that the court won't overturn it, or a reapplication can then be submitted and get passed because of the change in ordinance. Again, that just raises questions. I mean, who's benefiting? Why all this importance around Triborough? I understand ratables. Your residents have spoken about their other concerns, and what I saw at the beginning of this meeting is incongruous with what I'm hearing about Triborough and changing the ordinance. I hear about a caring municipality who cares about his residents, the good neighbor policy, and so forth, and then wants to turn around and do something like this to his residents. And I can't equate the two in my mind. So I don't know. I'm not a public speaker. I'm looking at my notes here, but I'm not reading them. I don't know if I missed anything I wanted to say to you. But I do want to make the point that appearances, I don't think Mountainside wants to have what appears to be going on, something sneaky or trying to be pushed through. We weren't notified. It just it just doesn't sit right. There's something called the smell test, and it just doesn't sit right with everybody that's here. And you haven't been at these meetings before for 6 months, but this place was packed with people who were against it. It's just so happened, and for it, but it just so happens that because of lack of notice and last minute, a lot of people aren't here. But I think that's all I want to say to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Jose Casais. I live on 1038 Charles Street. And I want to ask you guys, people, something before we go through this. I came into this country from Spain in 1968, with all dreams in my mind. I was working. I grown up a family. I bought a house in Bayonne where I lived for 40 years. Then in 2006, I was heart problem. So my kids, there was 24 years in that time in Bayonne was turning a little bit bad. So we decided to move it out of the city. And we look in Berkeley Heights, New Providence, Summit, then finally find a home over here on 1038 Charles Street. Now, I know what the soccer is. It's a big thing. Here, in Europe, it's a big place. They got all kind of good things, but the soccer, they have bad things when they come to the old guys, not young kids. Okay. About 3 months ago, I asked them for a permit for a shed on my property. I got a small shed, my lawnmower, my tractor, they don't fit right. I had to take the bags off every time I move it in, go out there. Okay. So I decided to buy a big shed, 10 by 12. I came here, asked for the permit. I keep a copy of my deed. And my permit been rejected. So I came here, I was talking to Mr. Disco. Mr. Disco said the place I put my shed was not enough room for the variance. So the solution is moving my shed to the back, on the yard. Say, okay, all right, I don't want to get any trouble. I move my shed. Yeah, but when this big building coming over here, they don't have enough variance for this kind of facility. And now, we coming over here, and where they're going to change the rules in Mountainside. Why? Because of this building, because he's a millionaire? I know it's a different story from my share to this building. But if I don't have enough room, if they don't have enough room, I hope maybe if this go on, today going to be in my neighborhood. But remember, tomorrow they can be on your neighborhood. So I hope you do the right way. Thank you. Oh, you haven't want to move out of Mountainside.
We don't want you to either.
I want to stay here.
Anyone else want to come up and speak?
How you doing? Mike Kristoff, 1094 Will Road. I apologize for my casual dress. I just came from baseball practice. So as you can imagine, I'm well in support of sports and sporting facilities. To be honest, I'm kind of late to this whole thing. I was aware of it when I was kind of going through the process of the zoning board. And I actually didn't come to too many meetings because I've been involved in a couple of these things before, and I thought it was kind of a slam dunk against it. I didn't really think that there would be changes to the zoning laws. From what I understand, the zoning laws exist to protect the existing homeowners, and we were one of them, and I kind of thought that, all the pre-existing requirements of why you would change these things really couldn't be met. So my question really is kind of, along with Mr. Schenker brought up, is the process by how this all went down, in that, it went through the zoning board, the chairman spoke against it, and then all of a sudden 6 people vote for it. then an appeal is filed, which myself and I think a lot of other people think have a pretty good chance of winning, and then all of a sudden this change of rules, ordinance change pops up. And I just found out about it just 2 nights ago. So, luckily, somebody brought it to my attention and I'm here. So I hope you guys, like you said, it doesn't really meet the smell test as far as I'm concerned as well. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm here for one reason, because I live on Willow Road and I'm concerned about property values. I'm concerned about my property values. I'm concerned about the traffic flows and all the rest of the things that are concerns that everybody else has. Because once all this traffic starts coming through, then what happens to Willow Road? Willow Road there's somewhat of a cut through there that exists. It's cut off right now. But if there's this massive traffic issues and massive traffic problems, then what happens later down the road? We start changing things, then maybe we decide to change and we open that, and then my property values and all the people on my road are kind of out of luck, as the expression goes. So those are my concerns, and I don't know if anybody's ever even thought about this, about opening Willow Road. I was kind of wondering what the thought process was there. Is that just a hard, fast thing that can never, ever happen? I don't know if that's for you guys to answer, for the zoning board or the master plan or the rest of those, but that's where my concerns lie as well.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so at this point, we're going to close the public portion, but we are going to address some of what I sense was your concerns. First of all, I guess we have not yet been served with any appeal of the ordinance yet. Have we, Martha? Because I wasn't aware that there was an appeal. Until an approval, such as the approval was given to, that was issued by Triborough, becomes non-appealable, it's not really the place of myself or the council to make any specific comments about the approval or the approval process. Is that correct, John?
Yes.
So as far as addressing the specifics of the merits of the Triborough approval and application process, until it becomes a final non-appealable decision in one way or the other, we're really not permitted to speak about that. To speak generally about the ordinance that we're proposing tonight, it was basically the consensus of myself and council that we needed to expand some of the uses in the LI zone. We do have other recreational facilities in the LI zone, not only Triborough, there's a baseball complex also, and we also have the tennis complex that's over behind the Elks building. So the thought was the expansion to a recreational use in the LI zone was consistent with what was already present there. We are having a tremendous problem in our commercial zone about commercial businesses that are shutting down. We're also having a lot of problems in that the commercial properties are filing tax appeals. I'm sure all of you were here when I talked about the budget, and we've had a substantial drop in the assessed values of properties in Mountainside, which actually caused our taxes to go up this year. As far as some of Mr. Bleeker, is that? Okay. Blecker's questions, I'm going to let John Post answer some of them. I can tell you that this ordinance was passed for first reading. At that time, it did get referred to the planning board. And last Thursday night, actually, which I think was the night that the resolution for Triborough was approved, it was on the agenda. There was a resolution and a finding that was made by the planning board And I can just read some of it to you, and certainly we can provide you with a copy if you'd like, sir. The findings were that the board found and concludes that the proposed ordinance to amend sections of the land use ordinance for the Borough of Mountainside are necessary and appropriate, and are therefore proper, subject to the approval of this planning board as required by the municipal land use law. Now therefore be it resolved by the planning board for the Borough of Mountainside that this planning board specifically finds, concludes, and recommends to the mayor and council proposed ordinance 1197, 2012, and the specific amendments stated therein are being consistent for inclusion in the land use element of the master plan for the Borough of Mountainside for enactment, and also consistent with the goals and purposes of the master plan overall, and this resolution shall specifically confirm the findings and conclusions of the board to this effect. That was passed last Thursday night. I can also tell you that Mr. Tomaine was present that night, and he also voted for this recommendation. So as far as the planning board reviewing it and them issuing some findings and some conclusions, that was in a resolution that was passed on Thursday night, and you're welcome to have a copy of it. But John, if you want to address some of the notices and how we go about passing an ordinance in town, that may address some of the other concerns.
Excuse me, I have to excuse myself. Okay.
Sure, Mayor. And I gathered, Mr. Blecker, from some of your questions that you didn't perhaps appreciate that what we're dealing with here tonight is not an application before the Borough Planning Board or the Board of Adjustment having to do with a land use development. What we are dealing with here tonight is an amendment to the Borough zoning ordinance. And what was followed, therefore, in connection with what we're doing tonight, is the statutory procedure for amending the Borough zoning ordinance. That started with a discussion by the governing body about amendments to the zoning ordinance at the work meeting in March of 2011. That was the first Tuesday in March, if my memory serves me correctly. It was followed then by a further discussion and the adoption, after my office prepared the amendment that had been discussed, by the adoption at the March public meeting, which was the third Tuesday in March, of the ordinance on first reading. It was introduced publicly that night, followed by, once the governing body had determined to proceed with the ordinance, a publication by the borough clerk, which occurred sometime, Martha, after.
Would have been the Thursday after the meeting.
Now, when I say publication, that's a publication in a newspaper circulated here in Mountainside. What are the papers, Martha?
The local source and the Westfield Leader.
And so the idea is to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to see what is being done by the Borough Council by way of amendments to our ordinance. What we are doing, in effect, is changing the law being the zoning ordinance, and it's important that everybody be notified, and therefore the Borough Clerk publishes that notice. What we are doing, therefore, tonight is the second reading of that ordinance, and this will be the evening when the definitive action is taken. But going back to the notice question, the fact that you folks are here tonight is evidence of the fact that notice was given, and you've had the opportunity to come down now and be here. The notice being the publication in the newspaper that is the statutory or the legal requirement when sure, let me just finish in terms of the process. So what we did was follow the statute with regard to the adoption of an ordinance. You also asked, sir, what the involvement was of the Borough Planning Board and whether the Borough Planner was consulted in connection with the preparation of the ordinance, and the mayor addressed those questions and referred to the findings that were made by the Planning Board in connection with the amendment. And that addresses your questions about whether the amendment is consistent with the Borough Master Plan. So that's what I had to say. You had a question that you want, or a comment that you wanted to make? Sure.
I just want to be clear about what you're saying to me. Are you saying, in fact, that you don't have to notify residents by mail and by certified mail who are within 200 feet of the LI zone if you're thinking of making changes? So are you telling me that in lieu of that, putting an ad in what you say is the Westfield Leader and the local source, which in fact, it turned out to be the Union Leader and the local source, for some reason, I don't know why. Are you saying that you don't have to do that? You don't have to do it the way the law states?
That is exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we're doing it differently from the way the law states. What I'm suggesting, sir, is that there's two different procedures. One procedure has to do with an application to a planning board or a board of adjustment for the development of a piece of property. And there are specific notice requirements having to do with notifying property owners within 200 feet of the application for development, et cetera. And I understood your earlier comments and your current question as having to do with the legal requirements that are associated with an application to a planning board or a board of adjustment for the development of a specific piece of property. What I suggested earlier and what's happening here tonight at this meeting, it has nothing to do with the development of a specific piece of property. What we're doing here tonight, the Borough Council that is considering an amendment to the Borough zoning ordinance, which has to do not with a specific piece of property, but with all of the properties that are located in the borough's LI zone. And the amendment under consideration was discussed earlier.
So,
And so the statutory procedure for amending the borough zoning ordinance is the procedure that, one, I described earlier, and two, that we followed, including Ms. Lopez, in connection with getting this amendment to the borough zoning ordinance to this point here tonight, where the governing body may lawfully consider whether to adopt it or not.
So it's just coincidental that Triborough was there trying to open all these other sports events in their building, and that now the LI zone is going to be approved for that when the resolution is passed and when it goes before whatever, to approve it. I'm not making myself clear because I'm not a lawyer, but
You're doing fine, sir.
what?
You're doing fine.
Oh, okay.
That's a different question from the questions that you were asking earlier. In other words, I mean, I gather what you're saying is, hey, look, is that we have a timing issue here because something happened at the planning board, and now there's something happening at the governing body level, which is different from what happened at the planning board. The governing body is now considering an amendment to the zoning ordinance, and it's quite conceivable, if you can ask the members of the governing body, whether there has been a process of people becoming more sensitive to what's happening in our LI zone, as you heard the mayor earlier comment about the problems that the governing body, or that Mountainside is experiencing with the erosion in property values in the LI zone, the tax appeals that we are hearing, the financial burdens that are being visited upon all of the taxpayers of Mountainside, not just the people in Charles Street or in that area. All of the residents in Mountainside are experiencing because of the issues that we are having trying to maintain the value of property in the borough's LI zone. The mayor addressed those, described those, and so as you look at questions involving this ordinance tonight, you have to think about those.
And I understand what you're saying. It's also my understanding that in the United States today, it's not quite the way it's being explained, whereby you have empty buildings and you must fill them because the manufacturing is going away. In fact, in the United States, manufacturing is coming back, and places are thriving that were desolate before. their manufacturing for autos are coming back. Manufacturing in general is coming back. It's not, it doesn't mean that we go and we sacrifice our residences in order to build something that is outrageous and that hurts us. And that's what's happening here. If there was one resident that was on top of this facility, it shouldn't be built. And in fact, there's many residents that are involved in this, and they're going to be hurt by it. And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong.
The only other comment, and I will let you speak in a minute. The only other comment is by amending the permitted uses in the LI zone, that doesn't mean that whoever wants to put up a facility, even similar to Triborough, is not gonna, on a specific piece of property, is not gonna have to come back before the planning board and notify everybody within 200 feet and go through the same process that Triborough had to go through. Just because it's now a permitted use does not obviate the necessity for them to come before the planning board and discuss the parking, the traffic, the pollution, the size of the building, how close it is to residences, all the other bulk requirements that anyone that's developing a piece of property has to satisfy. And if they are in violation of the current bulk standards, they're gonna have to seek variances. Even if they're not in violation of the bulk variances, if they go to put up a new commercial building in the LI zone, they still have to get site plan approval, which takes into account all of these considerations. So we're not taking the ability for the residents within 200 feet of a specific property to come before the planning board and set forth what their concerns are, which is exactly the process that took place during the Triborough application. So we're not taking that away from anyone. You're still gonna have to go to the planning board, and all these concerns that you're raising for Triborough can be raised for any application for development in the LI zone. So we're not taking that away by expanding the use to include recreational facilities. You still have to meet the bulk requirements, you still have to get planning board approval. The neighbors will still have the ability to come out and say whether they like or don't like the application and the reasons for that. So we're not taking that away. I think this gentleman wanted to say something.
Thanks again for the opportunity to speak to you a second time. I thought Mr. Post brought up an interesting point a moment ago when he said the board has to consider the owners in these commercial zones and their property. And you just discussed that we can talk about these concerns ourselves. But I don't think, frankly, that the concerns of the residents were really ever taken that seriously. You know, I just hate to say that. I realize we're all educated people here, but what discussions then, particularly when you decided to make these changes, I would ask, how did you address the devaluation of our property, or indeed, did you ever do a study? I mean, are you absolutely sure that by making a change now, where there's a building behind me, and maybe a dozen cars are in there in a day, that $1 million, is it going to devalue my property? Because Mr. Post said you're concerned about the value of the commercial. Well, what about all the houses? So specifically, I'd like to know specifically. I don't mean just you sat in a group and said, well, it doesn't matter, or we think. I want to know specifically, did you consider it, and what did that report state? Because if we're going to look at the interests of one commercial owner, then we should look at the interest of neighborhoods as a whole. And I don't think that's really been discussed here. And frankly, during that meeting, we went up there and someone that was in favor of this, and I hate to say this, but somebody who was in favor of it, came up to me and said, they're just making you feel good, Kurt. They're just making you feel good. It's a done deal from day one. And I said, I don't believe that. Because he was right and I was wrong. because I feel that the whole time we talked, the entire time, there was a dismissiveness about the comments we made. In fact, when the traffic study was done, they had a police officer from Springfield that did it for Mr. Blecker. They treated that officer that sat here like a criminal. If you could read the testimony, they said, well, how many times did you test the machine? Did you test it 1 time, 2 times, 5 times? Oh, you should have done it 15. I mean, it went on, and you could just
Sir,
tell.
I don't mean to cut you off, but we don't want to retry the Triborough case here
Okay.
tonight.
Then I just want to know about the property value.
I already reviewed our considerations when we decided to amend the ordinance in this fashion. I can sense by your question that you're not satisfied with that explanation. I'm sorry. It's our job to do what we feel is right for the entire community, and we felt that we've done that.
And that wouldn't affect my property value.
I didn't say that, sir.
Okay.
And I don't think Mr. Post, I think you misquoted Mr. Post. But I'm not
Okay.
here to be argumentative. with you.
Neither am I, sir.
We've deliberated it. Okay, we think we're doing what's right for the community. And, you know, I hear you, but we still have to do what we feel is right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I just,
Sure.
no, I'm sorry. Generally speaking, and I do think you may have misunderstood what Mr. Post was saying, he wasn't just talking about the property values with respect to the commercial properties. If you drive up and down Route 22, from Newark all the way out to Bridgewater, the Mountainside corridor is unique. It was, and Mr. Post is probably better at the history of it than I am, but it is, as opposed to retail, the zoning in other communities that is retail, it's all light industrial. And that was developed long ago, probably, I don't know, 60, 70 years or more, with a certain desire in mind. And that was probably successful for quite a while. There's concerns now that a restricted L1 or LI zone is not what has happened is those commercial properties, whether they're vacant or not, have devalued to the extent that it is affecting the taxes on the entire Mountainside community. Because if the commercial properties and the industrial properties in the town are all filing tax appeals and are vacant properties, that affects everyone in this town's taxes. And that affects the values of properties within our community. So it is not that this was just thought of because we're concerned about a particular applicant to the planning board, whom I know nothing about. I never heard of, other than hearing about it through people in town. I don't know who Triborough is. I don't know, I know some about what happened during the planning board, but my concern is over the entire community. And my concern is that we need to take a look at our zoning master plan because it affects the entire community. And one of the reasons why this particular change, and this ordinance, this amendment, we actually made 3 changes in it. One was dealing with the heights of certain buildings in town, residential buildings. I think the other amendment we dealt with was dealing with non-conforming uses. I don't need to get into all the specifics. And the third dealt with a intended use within a particular zone. This particular use that was added to this was brought up because there are already a number of uses within this zone that are within this description, this recreational, and I think the mayor talked about several, whether it be a baseball facility, a tennis facility. There's also, I think, the school. There's a fitness center right on 22 eastbound. There's a number of different recreational or fitness type activities that are already in that zone. So this change seemed to be a natural fit to try and open up a very restricted master plan with respect to this zone. I don't appreciate any kind of comment that there's any, underhanded thing going on here. It bothers me, upsets me. I have no idea what's going on with your tri-borough property. I understand your individual concerns. I get it. But we have a responsibility to the entire community. And I think we've recognized, not just in March, but there's been a recognition over the last several years that a change needed to be made. A change needed to be made for the betterment of the entire community. So I understand all of your individual concerns, but one of the things we did and we were required to do is we send this proposal to the planning board, and I believe it was unanimous approval to this suggestion. Now, I know people have quoted John Tomaine, the chairman of the board. He has been a wonderful chairman to this community. I've known the chairman for years. I think he does an outstanding job. The reason why there is a board, because it's not one person who makes a decision. And he gave his vote. I take it most of you in the audience agreed with his vote. But I suspect and don't know, because I have not spoken to any member of the planning board about this particular application. As the mayor says, because of any involvement that the mayor and council may have, I typically stay out of that. That is a separate board. Possibly one of the reasons why he had concerns about that is because of the restrictive nature of our original zoning ordinance. But when he saw the proposed amendment, he seemed to agree that seemed to be something that would fit within as an intended use moving forward. So I hope that answered some of your questions in a more of a summary of my understanding or my deliberations with respect to this particular issue.
Well, I'll just have one comment, too. You had mentioned, sir, I don't recall your name, that you assumed that the case was a done deal. I believe were your exact words prior to it ever being heard.
No, I did. Someone told
Or somebody told you that. I would like to assure you, I served on the planning board in the borough for about 5 years. No deal, no applicant is a done deal prior to being heard in Mountainside. I've been on council for 21 years. I can tell you Mountainside is way above board, and we always have been above board. And I really don't appreciate any type of a comment to think that something was done underhanded or backdoor, because I can assure you unequivocally that does not occur in Mountainside. And again, I'd like to agree with Councilman Lane's comment. I want to make you aware of another case. The Borough of Mountainside, 7 years ago, we have a couple of ball fields back by Deerfield School. Those of you that live in Mountainside are aware of them, especially the gentleman that just left. We lit those fields. We, as a borough, didn't have to go to the planning or zoning boards to get permission to do that. We did it voluntarily anyway. And we took the advice, as the mayor and council, we presented it to the planning board, and we took the advice and concerns of our planning board as far as what concerns and/or requirements they would have for us lighting the fields. And I can tell you that all of the neighbors that lived on Cherry Hill Road and some on the other Sawmill Road and surrounding areas, these fields are completely surrounded by residences. There are 3 very large baseball fields over there. All 3 of them are lit up with lights. The residents, as some of you were saying, thought that the sky was falling. They were worried about their property values. As a matter, one of them said that they wanted me to buy their property if it went down, by hundreds of thousands of dollars, as Mr. Blecker has suggested. No property went down, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those people that were mostly concerned about the lights in their field, because it's literally 10 feet away from their backyards. They have come up to me over the past 7 years and said what a great thing it was. There are restrictions on the lights. They can't go on before a certain time. They must be off before a certain time. Everybody has to be out of the field at a certain time. I'm sure, and again, I am not familiar with the Triborough application. We are not supposed to be involved in the Triborough application. That's why there's a board that handles that. I'm sure there were some restrictions to the board, by the board to the Triborough applicant. I can assure you if those are violated, they will be dealt with. Like I said, I've been on council for 21 years, and I served on the planning board. If there's a zoning violation, it will be dealt with. I do believe we have the authority to shut them down if they are violated and not dealt with in a proper manner. But I can assure, and again, I feel your pain, I understand your concerns. Mr. Blecker, I don't believe that, again, I'm not in real estate. The homes on Briar Hill Circle, whether they're $400,000 or $500,000, the minute any facility is built over there, your home isn't going to be worth $100,000. I find that, extraordinary that is going to happen. So I wouldn't be, too concerned about that. Like I said, there are noise ordinances that the Borough of Mountainside has. If they are violated, they will be dealt with. You bought a house next to an industrial area. There were concerns. But you bought a house next to a light industrial area. There have been many complaints over the years about 18-wheel tractor trailers going in and out of there. Again, those things could be addressed if they're violated. But nothing is done, and the reason for my point was, nothing is ever done backdoor or underhanded on this planning or zoning board or on this council. And I can assure you of that.
So, may I speak?
Sure.
Throughout the entire hearings with the planning board.
If you're going to discuss specific Triborough, we really can't comment on that.
We're not going to retry it here, sir.
We really can't comment on Triborough.
And actually, we're very lenient. Usually we allow only 5 minutes, and we've gone well beyond that with anyone that's wanted to speak. So if you're going to just come up and try and convince us that Triborough shouldn't have been approved, that's not something that we have control over.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand. You're saying that you sort of resent the fact that what's being implied here is that there's something that was done wrong. And
Or that it was, I
that
think
it was
the exact words
underhanded.
were, it was a done deal prior to being heard, and that I'm offended by.
Okay, that was not my comment, but, and that was a comment that we heard. All right, we're gonna beat this to death, so I'm gonna sit down, and I'm gonna, let happen what's going to happen. I have to know in my heart that I've done everything in my power to stop this, because it's my home, it's my property, it's something I've worked very hard for.
And we appreciate that.
And I'm sure that you've worked hard for your homes also. To go and change things for the sake of a dollar and hurt people who are living in your community doesn't make sense to me.
Last one.
Can I just ask whether this was on record? Why were the two members of the planning board replaced?
My recollection was one moved out, and the other one was replaced with someone that we felt had more experience.
Was it 25 years?
Yes, that's correct. Okay?
If I could add one more item. Councilman Turner brought if there's any zoning violations and noise ordinance. One person brought up drinking beer, knife fights, and things like that. Needs to say, if you see any activities like that, you call our police department, they'll be down there very quick, and certainly, we're not gonna tolerate events like that either.
Well, when the movie theater opened up in Mountainside, there were major concerns about traffic, about gang violence and fights and drinking beer and what was going on in parked cars, and it just hasn't happened. Just hasn't happened. Our police are going to be in that area as they are now. I'm sure once any facility, whether Triborough happens or doesn't happen, or some other facility happens or doesn't happen, our police department is one of the finest police departments in the county. And I have full faith that if something were to go on, and I don't think it will go on because there will be a police presence. Correct, Chief?
Absolutely.
Okay, at this point, we need a motion to close the public session.
So moved.
Do you have a second? Okay, you want to poll the council, please?
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Okay, at this point, we have to pay some.
Ordinance number,
One more
excuse me, Mr. Mayor, one
Okay,
more
we have
ordinance.
Ordinance 1198-2012. And
I'll take
I
that.
think that, Bill, why don't you take that?
This is an ordinance to appropriate the sum of $396,000 for the resurfacing of Wyoming Drive. And it should be noted that $180,000 of this project will be funded through a Department of Transportation grant. That money will be returned after the completion of the project.
We have a motion on first
Second.
reading, we have a second, this is the first reading, so there's no public input, please poll the council.
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have bills and claims.
Be it resolved by the mayor and council of the Borough of Mountainside that the following bills of the persons named and for the amounts stated below having been duly audited and found to be correct this 17th day of April 2012, the same be paid after council's review if and when funds are available. And that the mayor, council president, administrator, and treasurer are hereby authorized and directed to sign and deliver warrants for same, total $1,319,939.51.
We have a motion to pay
Second.
the bills, we have a second, you want to poll the council, please?
Councilwoman Andre?
Yes.
Councilman Lane?
Yes.
Councilman Mortimer?
Yes.
Councilman Turner?
Yes.
Next, we have any council comments? Billy, you want to just comment, Glenn, you want to just comment on what happened down at Echo Lake Park today?
Oh, yes. The County of Union, in cooperation with the Levinson family and the Kip Levinson Trust, as some of you may remember, Kip Levinson was a young man in Mountainside who tragically died in a car accident in 1985. And you may also know Dr. Levinson, who died about a year ago of natural causes. His widow and mother, Mrs. Bobby Levinson, and daughters Morrissey and Dana have a fund that has been used to beautify Echo Lake Park. They funded the restoration of the gazebo and the historic water wheel in the lower portion of Echo Lake Park. It was quite a nice ceremony, and it was a fitting tribute to two fine Mountainside residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Glenn.
I also just want to put it out there, for those of you watching TV 35, if you know anybody, or if you have an antique car, a motorcycle, if you want to be part of the annual PAL Antique and Car Show, there's going to be lots of good things there this year, lots of new food. There's going to be a band that some of us may or may not have heard about called the Nerds. But they are coming, right?
That's correct.
So they're going to be playing there. So if you have an antique car, motorcycle, there's going to be kids' cars. If your kids have a little car and they want to bring it down. So we'll do it again next month in May, but I just want to remind everybody now, June 17th, it's Father's Day, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Try to come out.
And it's important to know that this is not a fundraiser for the Mountainside PAL.
Correct.
All funds that are raised go to two specific organizations to help fight cancer. We receive,
For lung cancer and breast cancer awareness.
we receive, no, Mountainside PAL doesn't receive any of the profits. Okay, any audience participation? I don't see any audience, so we need a motion to go into executive session, whereas the Open Public Meeting Act of the State of New Jersey permits the public to be excluded from certain matters to be discussed by the governing body, whereas the mayor and council desire to discuss litigation, contracts, and personnel, which are matters where the exclusion of the public is permitted, whereas public disclosure of the results of this discussion will be made as soon as the matters discussed have been resolved by the governing body of the Borough of Mountainside. Now therefore be it resolved by the mayor and council of the Borough of Mountainside that the aforesaid matters shall be discussed in closed session upon adoption of this resolution, and I think we have contracts, personnel, and possibly litigation. So we need a motion to go to executive session.
Second.
Okay, let's go to executive session.